Sandra Kahn, killing it as always. All right, less than a week after a surprise exit from the playoffs, the Sixers and Ben Simmons agent Rich Paul met to discuss his future with the team. Our Adrian Wojnarowski reporting that. According to Woj, 76ers are committed to keeping Simmons as a central piece of their franchise. As for what went wrong with Simmons in the playoffs, Scottie Pippen says blame Doc Rivers. In an interview with GQ, the six-time champ said this kid has been this way the whole time, and Doc brought him in and set him up for failure. He's been like this, and you guys know he's been like this, and Doc kept putting him in the game. He kept letting that team do fouls on him, take him out of the game. The Lakers did it with Shaq, and he's bigger and more dominant and probably more fearless than Ben Simmons. Doc made him be a failure. Max?
Yeah.
Did Doc Rivers ruin Simmons?
No, Simmons ruined Simmons, and Stephen A. has talked about this. And, Stephen A., you read a text on the air about someone who apparently has knowledge who said he won't work, he's pampered, he's babied, et cetera, and he doesn't improve. Right? So Simmons bears responsibility. But let me put it another way, okay, Stephen A., so we can have an argument about this. If it were Ty Lue, maybe Simmons does get taken out at that moment. And that's the reason I brought up Ty Lue earlier and said if Ty Lue was coaching the 76ers. Because the last team Doc Rivers coached was the Clippers. And Doc, who has a championship in Boston, with a big three in a league that did not have any other big three, won one championship. Like, you're supposed to win a championship, and he did. If you have a big three and no one else does. 3 Hall of Famers, not to mention a young Rondo and everything. But since then, he's had epic playoff collapse after epic playoff collapse. And if you look what he did in these playoffs, not just with Ben Simmons, but going to an all-bench rotation that got killed, and then going 10 deep in a Game 7 and playing apparently unplayable guys. No, Doc, there are 2 reasons why I think it could have been handled better if it was a non-Doc coach. Like, for example, Ty Lue is very different to me. Number 1, he would take him out. He'd make the adjustment that needs to be made. But number 2, who Doc is, it's not just, well, Doc is incapable of making adjustments. I feel like, it seems to me, he feels like a coach, the type of coach that has to instill loyalty and trust with players. And he's going to ride with his guys. And so he stays with Ben Simmons when, Stephen A., clearly you could not. He was incompetent when you needed him most. And so while that is on Ben Simmons, if I'm a Sixers fan, I'm here going, come on, Doc. You know, there are coaches in the league who would have done what needed to be done, at least to give ourselves the best chance to win. You didn't do it.
Here's my thing about Doc Rivers that I think people are missing, and I'm not here to serve as an apologist for some of the things he's come up short with. I mean, you lose 3-1 leads on 3 separate occasions, if not more. That's a problem. You know what? You've got more blown leads than anybody over the last decade in the postseason. That's a problem. I understand that. Let's go back in history. Doc Rivers was supposed to achieve in Orlando when he had Tracy McGrady and Grant Hill, except he never really had Grant Hill. He goes to Boston. He's on the verge of getting fired because Danny Ainge couldn't get him any players. Then Danny Ainge pulls off a draft day deal, ends up getting Kevin Garnett from Minnesota, ends up getting Ray Allen to join Paul Pierce and Rondo in Boston. They win a championship. They go to the finals 2 times in 3 years. Okay, and if Kendrick Perkins hadn't been hurt in the Game 6, or who knows what would have happened in that Game 7 because he was a big man and then a force in the paint. And against Andrew Bynum and Pau Gasol and those guys, you kind of needed that. So they lost the finals there. He goes to the Los Angeles Clippers. Is it a crime that Doc Rivers relied on CP3 and Blake Griffin? Those were the cornerstones of the franchise. When they lost last year, is it a crime that he relied on Paul George and Kawhi Leonard? Now, this year was different. Because, you see, I had no problem with him relying on CP3 and Blake Griffin. I had no problem with him relying on Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. That's what the hell they were brought there to do. Ben Simmons is a different matter. And Ben Simmons is the indictment that you could throw against Doc Rivers because Ben Simmons, his reputation preceded him. Not just his inability to shoot, but some of his work habits or lack thereof. It was noted by Brett Brown. It was noted by other people within the organization. It was noted by Doc Rivers knew all of this stuff, and still you insisted that his shooting would not be an issue. You lost an 18-point lead one game. You lost a 26-point point lead another game. They engaged the hacker Simmons philosophy, which helped propel the comebacks in that series against Atlanta. So those are indictable things against Doc Rivers. But I don't want to hear that he ruined Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons did that before Doc Rivers ever arrived. Ben Simmons has been in the NBA for 4 years. How the hell do you not even attempt to shoot jump shots over 4 years? Who does that? Ben Simmons does that. Who goes to the gym and shows up on the gym and gets in a run, and that's his definition of working out? Ben Simmons. Who's agreed to meet with dudes to work you out and then don't show up to the gym and leave them hanging and stand them up? That's Ben Simmons. Who didn't listen to his teammates? Who didn't listen to his coaches? Who didn't listen to his own advisors? Who didn't listen to his agent? Because let me tell you something about Rich Paul. I'm going to put everybody on blast about Rich Paul right now. You got people that are very, very competitive in the world of agents and super agents and all of that other stuff. You got GMs and executives that want to talk behind people's back and say things about people off the record. Listen, I've seen it all over a quarter century covering this league. Here's what I will give all of these agents credit for, but definitely Rich Paul is included in that. They kind of know their damn basketball. And Rich Paul, and listen, him and Maverick Carter, I'm trying to tell you right now, you can't tell them anything about basketball. They damn near think they invented the game. That's how much they know about it. And I say it facetiously, but affectionately, because I got love for both of them, and I love talking basketball with them. But when they make basketball points, I have to tell you right now, I could disagree with them. I have never once had a conversation with Rich Paul and say this man don't know basketball. He knows. And there ain't no way in hell a guy that's in his staple that he represents, Rich Paul ain't telling, you need to work on this, you need to work on this. Let's make sure we do this, this, and that. Which means Ben Simmons didn't listen to him either. So when Scottie Pippen brings up Doc Rivers, I'm saying to Scottie Pippen, where the hell have you been? Are you not paying attention? Because this man was this way long before he ever arrived. Now, his point about benching Ben Simmons is valid. But to accuse Doc Rivers of ruining Ben Simmons, that means you changed him into something that made him worse. No, he was already there. He was already there.
Yeah, I'm focusing on...
This is about Ben Simmons.
I'm focusing on the benching. Like, it takes a lot of guts for a coach to take his second best player, at least on paper, out. And really would take the shooting component out of it. Ben Simmons is as good as anyone in the game.
Absolutely.
Minus the shooting.
Minus the shooting.
So it takes a lot of guts to take that guy out. And I'm not saying Doc doesn't have guts, because on the one hand, it takes that, and on the other hand, that seems to fly in the face to me of the kind of guy, of the character of Doc Rivers. Like, he'll believe in a guy, and other people don't believe in him. He'll stay with him, and he feels like eventually the guy comes through and rewards him for that.
Is it that, Max? Is it that? Or is it that Doc didn't believe in others?
Well, I mean,
Thibault, Shake Milton. Shake Milton was shooting the basketball. In the minimal minutes he received, when he put the ball up, it was going in.
I felt there were times where Shake was unplayable in these. Like, he had one good playoff game, and I remember thinking, "Oh, look at that, Doc stuck with him."
Then build off of it.
But
build off of it.
I don't know if that was possible. I mean, it may be a roster issue, but the fact is, Magic was right. Game 5, when they started hacking a Ben, and he couldn't come through, it worked, seemed to mentally destroy him. So like, you can't blame Doc for ruining him, but the least you could say is Doc could have handled that situation better.
I totally agree with you there, Max. We don't have a disagreement there. No. And I don't disagree with Scottie Pippen about how Doc Rivers should have benched him. My point is, when you say ruin, you imply that there was something that was there that Doc took away. And what I'm saying is, nah, it was Ben Simmons. We all believe in Ben Simmons. We believe that if Ben Simmons could shoot, Ben Simmons would be LeBron James 2.0. The brother is special. The problem is he's never worked on his shot. He's been hard-headed. He hasn't listened to people who have implored him to do those things. And it came back to bite him in the very... Now, he ain't going to have... He might not like me saying it. He might not like you saying it. Here's the biggest problem with Ben Simmons. That will dominate his thoughts, because what we haven't seen from him is a guy that looks in the mirror or looks internally at himself more than he's looking at what others say about him. That's what we have not seen. And it's what we just finished lamenting a few segments ago, rather, when we we were talking about what Doris Burke had to say as it pertains to Paul George. Not specifically him, but I went into the modern day athlete. Some of them, not most, not all, but some of them. Y'all will look at others, but you won't look at yourself. And that's the problem. You ain't working on your game. This ain't the old days, Max, where you had to go out there and get a second job to supplement your income. You get enough money for generations. All you got to do is work on your game. And we're seeing year after year after year, dudes come back with the same skills they ended the previous season with. They are not working on their games.
Know what, Stephen A.? And I know they were at a young age, but they both came from high school. The most impressive thing to me about Trae Young these playoffs, I think it was either NBA or maybe it was us at ESPN, there's a graphic out with who did what in the Western Conference Finals by age 22. It was Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, and Trae Young. The only way to get on lists with Kobe Bryant and LeBron James is to constantly work.
Absolutely. And he's been shining for sure.
You can't do what Steph Curry does without work either. At 33? Can't do what Steph Curry does without work.
Any of the top players.
Works his butt off.
All right. Speaking of Scottie Pippen, friend of the show, he happens to be watching. He's got a response. That's coming up next right